Okay, let's start our class. Today, we will talk about Chapter 8, Past Strikes and Dispute Resolution. Before we dive into today's topic, I would like to give you a question. We learned that an employer and labor union negotiate on the employment contract regarding wages, benefits, and other terms and conditions of employment. And here's my question. In the bargaining process, do negotiators, such as management and union, have to reach an agreement? And if the negotiators do not meet an agreement, what will happen? If the negotiators do not meet an agreement, the threat of strikes, lockouts, and other pressure tactics will occur. Bargaining disputes or impasses and methods for their resolution are central topics in labor relations for several reasons. The possibility of a bargaining dispute underlies all bargaining negotiations because the threat of strikes, lockouts from employer, and other pressure tactics, also known as economic weapons, can be used to try to force the other side to make additional concessions at the bargaining table. After I introduce today's learning objectives, I'll give you a recent example of bargaining disputes in Youngstown State University from Faculty Union. Last week, we learned that employers and union negotiate on the employment contract regarding wages, benefits, and other terms of employment. In the previous slide, I've asked a question. In the bargaining process, do negotiators, such as management and labor union, have to reach an agreement? I will bring NLRA, the National Labor Relations Act, to answer this question. NLRA specifically states that the good faith bargaining obligation does not compel either party to agree to a proposal or require the making of concession. I have copied NLRB's statement in their webpage in this slide. So in their website, they have stated that there is a right to strike for employees. So Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act states in part, employees shall have the right to engage in other concerted activities for the purpose of the collective bargaining or other mutual aid or protection. If the minimum conditions are met, unions are legally stopped to provide their labor force to their management, and that is called as strike. So therefore, in the bargaining processes, negotiators, like employees and management, do not have to reach an agreement. If the negotiators do not meet an agreement, what will happen? Because fail to meet an agreement between management and unions can be one of the natural outcomes of collective bargaining. It is important to learn the options for resolving bargaining disputes and impasses. And also, it is important to understand different types of strikes and lockouts and their roles in labor unions and their legal restrictions in the private and public sectors. Okay, I would like to start today's class by introducing the news from Youngstown State University. So it is a recent news article from October 11th, 2020. So this is a headline of news article. Youngstown State University faculty to strike on Monday. So faculty members at Youngstown State University intend to strike beginning Monday as attempts continue to reach a new 3-year contract with the school. So as we learned already, when union and management meet an agreement during the collective bargaining processes, that agreement lasts in average 3 years. So after 3 years of contract, since their agreement in collective bargaining table, they need to negotiate with new term. And this is the year the faculty members at Youngstown State University and the management are on the collective bargaining table. Let's look at the term what school provided to the union. So the school officials offered a 3-year deal that offered no pay increase in first year, but increases of 1% in the second year and 2% in the third year. If you think about the inflation rate in the United States, no pay increase in the first year means so the income of Youngstown State University faculty is actually decreasing based on what school has been offered. And the union says they need to receive more salary because they have the information that the university has a 3 million surplus. But school officials says that is not the case. So there is a discrepancy in the information of profit between union and management. Due to the disagreement on the term that the school offered, Youngstown State University faculty went out a strike on Monday. So what can be the outcome of Youngstown faculty union strike? So this is the article the day after the union went on strike. After union went on strike, management modified their proposal to the union. So let's see the modified offer. No pay raise at first year, and 1% pay raise at second year, and 2% pay raise at third year. It's the same from the original proposal. On the top of that, university proposed additional 1,000 lump sum payment to lecturers and assistant professors, and 750 lump sum payment to associate and full professors. And that was it. If the union accepts this modified offer, then union and management will agree to this modified contract and work peacefully for additional 3 years. So as you can see, nowadays, strike does not occur frequently, but if it occurs, it could largely impact not only management and employees, but also communities and public around that organization. Because major strikes can have a devastating consequences for workers, employers, and public, it is important to understand why strikes occur, what is the outcome of the strike, and how we can resolve. Companies can lose customers and profits and see their stock prices decline. And public sector agencies like state government and federal government can lose the support of taxpayers and voters. And workers can lose income and face severe emotional and financial strain. And communities around that organization might be divided between employee side and organization side and suffer economic losses. Public could lose of important goods, services, and sources of transportation. Think about the strike in airline industry. Due to that strike, people could lose their sources of moving state to state. Since the outcome of strike is so bad, some dispute resolution methods can be used before an impasse is reached. In the private sector, a strong sense of property rights and the freedom to enter economic contracts of one's own choosing means that the use of third-party dispute resolution mechanism is usually voluntary. So in other words, third-party dispute resolutions are rarely used from labor and management in the private sector. However, in the public sector, the primacy of serving the public interest means that third-party dispute resolution mechanisms are often compulsory. So in the public sector, labor and management must use the third-party dispute resolution methods before the strike occurs. Third-party dispute resolution mechanisms use a neutral third party to settle bargaining impasses with the goal of avoiding costly strikes. So the following are the 3 primary third-party dispute resolution. First, mediation. The neutral third party is a mediator who tries to facilitate an agreement but lacks the power to force an agreement. So a mediator has a high level of control over the negotiating process, but not the outcome. So a mediator can be either an independent practitioner or full-time employee of mediation agency at the federal level. So as we covered last week, the FMCS, the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, provide a mediator to help to meet an agreement between management and labor union in the negotiation processes. And second, there's the arbitration. In this case, the neutral third party is an arbitrator who forces an agreement on both parties by issuing a ruling that specifies the settlement terms. Therefore, an arbitrator has a high level of control over the outcome, but no involvement in the negotiating processes. In this case, arbitrators usually either are full-time or self-employed arbitrators, or lawyers or university professors who arbitrate on a part-time basis. At this moment, you might be curious about what is the example of mediation processes. Compared to private sector, public sector is using mediation processes to resolve the labor dispute between labor union and management. And I brought a case from Teachers Union in Hawaii. So let's look at the news coverage.
Union, HSTA, will enter into federal mediation to resolve the teachers' contract issues. The union's president made the announcement this evening. Marissa Yamane has more on our top story.
Joe, as you recall, the state last year, in an unprecedented move, imposed a contract without a vote by union members. Then in January, the teachers rejected a contract proposal, but then 4 months later voted again in favor of it, but it was too late. So now an opportunity to get the ball rolling again. Governor Abercrombie sent this letter to HSTA President Will Okabe last week, and the union forwarded the letter to its members, which include 13,000 teachers across Hawaii. It's a proposal for both sides to use a federal mediator to attempt to resolve our differences and move to a collective bargaining agreement for the good of the teachers and the keiki of Hawaii.
I'd like to announce that the negotiation committee and the board of directors have agreed to accept the governor's offer to go with the federal mediator.
After learning about the union leadership's decision, Governor Abercrombie responded that he's pleased and, quote, "This is a step forward by both sides to find a solution that will resolve our differences for the sake of our students and school teachers."
I think the message to the teachers is that we are open to talks.
The governor said in his proposal letter that using a federal mediator is not about establishing who is right or who is wrong, but rather to re-engage the HSTA in discussions which can lead to a resolution of the issues that separate us.
We feel that a third party will be objective to be able to resolve both sides.
These three teachers work at McKinley High School, and they all think that federal mediation is a good idea.
I think whatever brings closure is what's best for us.
We hope that an agreement will be reached. We've waited a long time to get our contract, and hopefully some good will come out of this.
We were looking for a positive resolution. I mean, although the third party mediator does not make a determination for the parties, it will give us an opportunity to understand the state side, and we will have an opportunity to express our side as well.
And Okabe says he hopes they can start the mediation process as early as next week. Marissa Yamane, KH12 News, Hawaii's news leader.
So as you can see from the video, in the public sector, like teachers, firefighter, or police, we can see often the federal mediator in the negotiation processes. In recent days, since 2015, contrary to the decline of strike in the private sector, there were sharp increase in the number of strikes in the public sector, especially in the education field. Okay, let's move on to the labor strike. What if management and labor union fail to meet an agreement in the collective bargaining processes? If then strike occur and employees refuse to work until an employer changes its position on one or more issues. The faculty union went on a strike if they did not satisfied on management initial proposal. After strike occurred, management changed their initial proposal. In this case, management additionally provided a 1,000 lump sum payment to the employees in the Youngstown State University. As you can see from the Youngstown State University case, a strike is fundamentally an expression of protest and dissatisfaction, but it is also frequently intended to pressure on employer by withholding their labor. Strikers seek to increase the employer's cost of disagreement by taking the employer's profits. In this case, it has mainly occurred in private sector. In the public sector, labor tried to take state or federal's ability to satisfy the demands of taxpayer and voters. As you all know, there are a variety of reasons why employees might strike. So there are a number of different types of strikes rooted in the variety of reasons. So first, economic strike. When employees strike to win better wages, benefits, and work rules, such strikes stem from bargaining impasses over mandatory bargaining items when union contracts are being negotiated. Second type of strike is lockout. An employer-initiated rather than worker-initiated work stoppage. Lockout is an employer-initiated work stoppage during the bargaining impasses. During the lockout, an employer tells the workers not to return until they agree to the employer's terms. So in this case, employer banned their own employees not to work. And third type of strike is unfair labor practice strike. So this is a type of strike to protest an employer's unfair labor practice. There are other types of strike, but three types of strike you can see in this slide is protected by Section 7 of the NLRA. So workers cannot be disciplined or discharged for participating in these types of strikes. In this room, there might be a student who are not familiar with lockout. So I brought the lockout example from the news coverage. So this is the lockout from Armstrong.
Continuing coverage of the Armstrong employee lockout in Lancaster County. News 8's Meredith Jorgensen is live at the Marietta plant to tell us about the scene there. Meredith?
Hi, Susan. The crowd is growing here of the locked out employees outside Armstrong's ceiling tile plant here in Marietta. More than 300 workers found out yesterday that they are not welcome back to work without a labor agreement. Most of these men and women make drop ceilings for the manufacturing company. Many have worked at Armstrong for decades. Today, though, they're gathered to support each other after their employer locked the workers out yesterday around noon. Union employees have been working without a contract since June and thought they were negotiating in good faith when Armstrong shut them out. The latest negotiations included a proposal from the manufacturer last Wednesday and a deadline set for last Saturday. The union says, though, it couldn't organize a vote on the proposal in time. Now they're standing outside of their plant rather than working in it.
I feel sad that the company came to this point. I mean, it's not right. We have people, that have children. We don't have benefits right now, no health insurance. We're not yet making money. We have to feed our families too.
In addition to having those mouths to feed, they also need to be drinking a lot of water today because of the oppressive heat out here along 441. Now, union members are trying to stay cool. They have coolers full of water they brought in 2 tents. But joining me now live is Tom Jones. He's the international staff representative. Tom, where are the negotiations right now?
They're at a stall. Back in June, we offered to work under the same conditions of the current agreement until such time as a new agreement was worked out, which would allow them to continue to negotiate in good faith. And the company flatly rejected that proposal. On June 15th, they gave us a proposal that was flatly rejected by the employer. And we told them that we're still willing to work under the same terms and conditions of the old agreement. And just recently, we received a letter, which was yesterday, notifying us that effective immediately at 12 o'clock, they were going to lock these employees out. And that's just what they did. Now,
And this has been really frustrating for most of the people here. We did hear back from Armstrong. They said in a statement that Armstrong just sent to News 8 that they have extended the deadline for the last offer until Friday. They say in an effort to give the union enough time for a vote. The company, though, adds that this lockout will continue until the union ratifies the contract. That's the latest here. Susan and Marietta, back to you.
All right, Meredith, thank you.
After this lockout from Armstrong Floorings, union workers ratified a new labor agreement. So briefly, I will provide a context why company lock out their own employees. So there were collective bargaining between management and labor. And they met a tentative agreement. And grassroots union members rejected their first tentative agreement. And after that, management and labor worked together on the collective bargaining table and met a second tentative agreement. But union members rejected again. Union leader and management met a third tentative agreement, but the union members rejected it. So that's the reason why Armstrong Flooring Company locked out their own employees. After the lockout, there were a new agreement, and finally, employees accepted that fourth tentative agreement. And after that, employees were allowed to return to their workplace. So far, we have talked about 2 strikes that are protected by NLRA. One is economic strike, the second one is unfair labor practice strike. And now we will talk about permissive strikes that are outside of the boundaries of the NLRA. So the strikes over these issues are not protected, and workers can be fired for participating in such strike. Then what is the permissive strike that are outside the boundaries of NLRA? So the first one is recognition strike. So when employees strike to force an employer to recognize and bargain their union, it is called as recognition strike. The second one is sympathy strike. When employees strike to support other workers who are on strike, it is called sympathy strike. And third one is wildcat strikes. So most union contracts contain no strike clause prohibiting work stoppages over grievances during the life of the contract. So as I mentioned before, usually collective bargaining is effective 3 years in average across the industry. But if the employees went on a strike within that 3 years, it is called wildcat strikes. I would like to show you what is a sympathy strike in the case of Kaiser Hospital in the Sacramento, California.
Thousands of Northern California Kaiser employees are striking today.
All 21 hospitals will be affected. KCRA3's Mallory Hoff is live from the Sacramento Medical Center on Morse Avenue with how things are going. Good morning.
Good morning. The National Union of Healthcare Workers has been out here since about 7 o'clock. In the last hour, the size of this group has grown. The NUHW has a lot of support out here. Members of the Building Engineers Union are striking as well, and Kaiser employees with the California Nurses Association are calling this a sympathy strike. They're calling it that because they agreed not to strike in their current contract. The unions say the main reason for the strike is to assist patients in getting better care more quickly, especially those with mental issues. I spoke with 2 registered nurses on opposite sides of the picket line.
So we're here to support them.
First, what would you say to those who are crossing the picket line today?
You know, you got to do what you have to do, but you know, it's in fairness. I believe that you got to stand up for some people that just can't take care of themselves.
We know that many employees will cross the picket line, but we won't know the numbers until later today.
And it is a similar scene at other Kaiser hospitals in Northern California. This group marching with signs out here this morning. Kaiser officials tell me they are fully staffed and they will be open all day today. We do expect this to continue through 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. For now, live in Sacramento, Mallory Hoff, KCRA 3 reports.
All types of strikes are more likely to be illegal when conducted by government employees. And prohibiting public sector strikes is rooted in several traditional beliefs. So first, striking against the government is an acceptable threat to the supreme authority of the government. And the second, public sector employee bargaining power is too high because there are no market-based checks on their demands. And third, government services are too critical to be interrupted. Think about the soldiers. And going on a strike is even more risky. A number of states not only prohibit all strikes, but also specify some economic penalties for the violators. According to the New York's Taylor Law, it imposes a 2-for-1 strike penalty. For each day workers are on strike, they lose their pay for the day plus a fine equal to their day pays. So far, we have talked about why strike occurs and what is the outcome of the strike. Let's look at the frequency of the strike in the US. The US strike activity in the early 21st century is at an all-time low. Look at the graph. From the 1970s to 2020, it decreases sharply. This sharp decline in United States strike activity since 1980 begs the question of why strikes occur. If the economy is strong, employees are not worried about losing their jobs, and replacement employees are difficult to find. The threat of strike might be more viable than in a weak economy with significant anxiety about job loss and with many available replacements. From 1970 to 1980, there were severe energy crises, so it was a long economic depression all over the world. So does deep depression make employees too worried about their losing job? And there were tons of replacement employees that management can easily find to replace employees who went on a strike. So bargaining power and the threat of a strike should affect the extent to which bargaining outcomes favor labor or management. And economic conditions heavily influence the bargaining power of union and management. And another reason why number of strikes decline is that during the 1980s, companies were allowed to use permanent strike replacement rather than temporary strike replacement. Temporary strike replacements were discharged at the end of strike. However, permanent strike replacements did not discharge at the end of the strike. So this permanent strike replacement could largely threaten union members worried about losing their jobs after the strike. So there's a discussion whether permanent strike replacement should be continued or not. But we will talk about it later in the later section. So I will show you the short video about strike replacement. And this is the case from Honeywell.
It's now day 25 of the machinist strike against Honeywell here in Kansas City. Workers have been on the picket line since they failed to approve a new 6-year contract, and now the company is making a move by hiring replacement workers. KNBC 9's Peggy Bright is live tonight outside the plant on Bannister Road. Peggy?
Kelly, take a look behind me here. You can see that strikers are still on the picket lines here tonight. The conflict between the company and the machinists seems to boil down to a 2-tiered system proposed by Honeywell. One scale for current workers, another for new hires.
The less experienced people come in and make a little bit less salary than those that have been in your business with a tremendous amount of experience.
The strikers say it's way less. Starting pay after the first of the year, about half what current workers are making. But Honeywell says the workers catch up as they gain experience.
They understand that a raise in a time when many of the people that they work with, their customers, the federal employees that they deal with, have had their wages frozen for 2 years.
Honeywell is a contractor for the Department of Energy. This plant makes non-nuclear components for nuclear weapons. And Honeywell says in order to keep operating, they will bring on 130 temporary employees for maintenance and custodial work right now, and will hire about 500 more temp workers as needed over the next several months. Behind the scenes, union workers say they think that plan means Honeywell is not bargaining in good faith. The union says Honeywell's contract offer takes advantage of the poor economy, even though Honeywell is doing well. The union says strong health care, retirement, and wage plans are important for newcomers, too. Local 778 says bringing in replacement workers is a safety threat. Now, no one from the union was available to talk with us today because they are up at the Union Hall not far from here, still in the middle of negotiations. We are live on Bannister Road. Back to you in the studio, Kelly.
All right, thank you, Peggy. Now, Honeywell says with wages, overtime, and benefits, its average union machinist makes about $125,000 a year, well above the average for this area.
Okay, today we have talked about options for resolving bargaining disputes and impasses, such as mediation and arbitration. And we could understand different types of strikes and lockouts, and their roles in labor relations, and their legal restrictions in the private and public sectors. And we have talked about how strike frequency decreased since 1980s due to the strike replacement, as well as economic crisis. I hope you enjoyed the class, and I will see you next week.